So if we consider our looping structures from the previous videos, we know that a while loop is best used when you want to change how many times the loop is iterated within the body. That might be because you're asking the user for login credentials. You need to continue to prompt them until you get the correct results. Or you know that a loop needs to be iterated faster or slower depending on certain conditions inside the loop body. We're also aware that if you want to execute the body of a loop at least one time, regardless of the condition, a do loop is your best choice. However, these two looping structures give you great flexibility. There's one drawback to them, and that's the fact that you have to manually iterate or update the loop by changing the variable that's being evaluated. Do you remember in our examples it was $x? You had to make sure that you iterated or updated that value, that variable, within the body of the loop, which can become a pain when you have a really big body with lots of if and else statements and even other embedded loops. If you don't want to worry about that, because you know exactly how many times your loop should iterate, there is another looping structure that PHP provides you with, called the for loop. Now, at first glance, it looks almost exactly like every looping structure you've seen. It's for the for keyword, parentheses that will evaluate a condition, and we have our curly braces, which will contain the block of code we should execute. However, follow along with me because there's a slight difference. Inside of these parentheses, we're going to actually have three pieces of information rather than just the expression to evaluate. Do you remember how with our while loops, we had to prime the read? That was set a variable that should be checked every time in these parentheses. So we would set x to 0, for instance. We're actually going to do that inside of the parentheses. So x would be 0. But we're going to go ahead and call it I, just for the sole fact to keep with naming conventions. Often in for loops, you'll see that the iterator is called I, or j, or index. But you can call it whatever you want. But we'll end that piece with a semicolon. The next piece is the expression that we evaluate. This is what you're used to. So, is our I less than 10? Okay? You should be more comfortable with that. The final piece is where we update the loop. So we would say I is equal to I plus 1 or plus 2. But what you also often see is we go with the shorthand version, I plus plus, which just updates the value of I by 1 every time the statement's ran. And we don't need a semicolon at the end of the third piece. So let's just slow down and look at what we did. Rather than priming the read outside of the loop, where it could get lost or confused or updated with the wrong value, we did it inside of our parentheses. It's easy to find. Next, we have our expression we're evaluating. Great, that's normal. But the third piece, where we're updating the loop iterator, no longer is in the body where we might accidentally not use it or not update it or forget to put it. It's right here, easy to find. This looping structure is great when you know you want to loop for 10 iterations for sure, or maybe 5 or 7, etc. You have a set number you want to iterate. A while loop and a do loop could do this, but a for loop is just a little easier to work with. So to show you an example, we're just going to echo out the value of I and the break statement just to make this pretty readable. But if you notice, all we had to do inside of this body was put the commands we wanted. We didn't have to worry about any updating logic. So if we save and refresh, we're going to loop 10 times. And we can easily change the way this loop works just by updating one value. There we go. And that's the power of for loops. It's condensed together. We don't have to prime the read outside of the loop. We don't have to update the iterator inside of the loop. We can just perform the tasks at hand.